Hey, welcome back to the interview podcast where today we are having Plus, also known as Plus Ultraman, to give some behind the scenes context. He was basically the main person who inspired me to even do what up content in the first place and kind of is responsible where I'm at now because I've done lots of different content on YouTube over time, and that was the push that I needed to get where I'm at now as far as that goes. As far as what he does on his channel, he's done Pokemon related web content. He's done My Hero Academia, Dragon Ball, Naruto. He's also done his own podcast if you ever want to check out anything he's been posting.
What's going on, Drew? What's going on? Members of the What If universe. Forever, whoever ends up seeing it, I'm glad to be able to, entertain you guys forever long we'll have you. And thanks so much for having me. I'm so surprised we haven't done one of these yet, because I feel like we almost did. I know we had planned to do interviews before, so I'm glad we're finally getting around to it.
I will say this is probably the longest one that was like years in the making as far as that goes, because there was just so many other people that went through, and then other stuff just kind of fell into place with different people. That's just how life goes.
I get quote unquote busy, which is me both trying to work and then me also being around the house, and I have my parents and my sister here, and I also have two massive Rottweilers who are children, so things can be very hectic at the same time. And last year ended up being very, very wild with me running back and forth to like both events and birthday parties and funerals, sadly. So it became very, very much a thing of like a scheduling tug of war. But I'm so glad we finally got to do it. So glad.
I did want to ask one thing when deciding like with your channel name. What does it like mean to you as far as that goes?
I think I discussed this in like one of the first Q&A videos I did when I hit like one of my first subscriber milestones, you would call it. And the way I always looked at it was the Go Beyond Plus Ultra thing isn't just the tagline for My Hero Academia. I do really like it because it sounds really corny. It is corny. It is like weeb speak, but at the exact same time, the sentiment behind it is really, really heartfelt and genuine, because it is the idea of in everything you do, whether it be when you get up and brush your teeth in the morning, to when you interact with people, to when you're, for when I was younger and I was actually like, My Hero was around and like airing or starting to air, like going to class and football practice, whatever it might be. There are moments in which you can do the bare minimum, you can do 100%, but you could also go beyond that. And like, yeah, everyone says like, oh, give it 110% of your effort to stuff. But that idea of like, I want to go even beyond that, like beyond the beyond. That's something in Sparking Zero, they just put out Beast, and when Beast fights UI Goku, when Beast Gohan fights UI Goku, he talks about like, I'm always seeking the beyond the beyond. I love that idea, that concept of trying to reach beyond or trying to transcend what even you think at that moment is possible. That's kind of what it meant to me, I guess.
Yeah, that's pretty deep to think about for sure, as far as the actual thematics and what the actual statement like means, how it can apply to our people. Because I think when a lot of people watch certain shows, they take it like face value, like for entertainment sometimes, and sometimes stuff is overlooked as far as like what's the actual messaging behind what you're watching. And this can apply to even like bad shows, to be honest.
It's everything. And you always get that, I'm sorry to cut you off, you always get that like, that there's certain levels to it, because sometimes you're like, okay, you're just yapping for yap's sake. And then sometimes you're like, okay, that actually is like a profound like take I hadn't really thought of. And then sometimes you're like, you're looking into something like I don't think it's that deep. Like you have the icebergs to even that. So like a lot of the time, if it's like, okay, here's like some specific anime lore that you didn't get because maybe the manga really delved into it, but the anime didn't. Okay, cool. Somebody like who really likes that anime might like that. And then you get to like that second tier, which is like, here's something about like a TV show or something that everybody knows about, but nobody like really got that deep into. And everybody be like, okay, cool, that actually is really cool, because that's more like a wide in the cultural zeitgeist. And then that like third tier is, I'm gonna break down the Ed and Eddie like cul-de-sac like hell conspiracy, and I'm gonna put a lot of effort into that. Like those will be the ones where it's like, okay, how how are you putting that much effort into that? Like, you see those kinds of videos all the time, like evil Mort theorem. It's stuff where it's like, how are you putting that much like thought and depth into that? But it is just generally like, we all have different brains and we can dig into the ice cream a little bit different, I guess.
I'm gonna say something funny. The theorizer guy who made the evil Mort theory and a bunch of other stuff, I've actually talked to him before. I really like not only that the way he discussed things, but the way he chose to build a character around himself. That's basically the best way to put it. Like, instead of doing like MatPat's like, hey, it's me, the YouTuber guy, it's more like, who's this mysterious, insane person trying to convince me a 15-part theory about why Mort's evil? Like, that's the fun energy that you get off of it once you realize like what some people are doing, because some people take things a lot for face value, and I kind of like he's trying to put mysterious and intrigue with himself, and that's what keeps some people invested.
Yeah, and that's what's interesting about stuff like that. I guess another like way you can look at that is you can look at anime like, oh, you have like Kill la Kill. There's all those discussions about like, is Kill la Kill actually like, is there like some thematic like depth to it? Is it actually like a discussion of like fascistic like control and overhold and like overreach of hierarchy and the idea of like constrainment to the point of like freedom and individuality just being like snuffed out? Or is it just like a horny like anime? And the answer is like, yeah, okay, cool. You don't have to like necessarily delve into either. There are going to be aspects of both showing up, and you can make the argument for both. So I mean, yeah, at some points you're just yapping for yap's sake, and at some points you're actually making a profound statement. And I guess I like all of it.
So like, before making What If content, did you do anything else or like have a different channel?
I didn't. The channel, my main channel, says it's much older than I've been making content. This is going into 2025 is going to be my 7th year of content creation on August 26th of 2025. But I believe my channel was made in 2016, probably because I wanted to comment on a video in 2016, so I had to make the channel. So it might say I'm on my 8th year. I forget exactly when it was. It might be 2014 even. But I believe like the YouTube thing says it's a 10-year-old channel. But I didn't really do anything else. I believe the most like content creator adjacent thing I've ever done before YouTube was way before I'm a millennium baby. I'm from the year 2000. So this was in the era of the prequel Star Wars films had just come out. I got Revenge of the Sith on DVD. I'm chilling. Lego Star Wars is fun. There is no episode 7 of Star Wars. Like, I don't know what happened to Luke, and I'm distraught about it. So I decided I'm just going to grab like this really old like cassette camera we have, and I'm going to film my own like fan episode 7 of Star Wars. And I don't even remember what the plot of it was. I don't remember how long it was, but it's somewhere in like a bag of cassettes, and I have to dig it out and then convert it to like new age, newfangled technology to uncover it, which I don't think it's really worth it. So I think that's probably the most content creator adjacent thing. I wrote like, I think 1.5 fan fictions maybe beforehand as well, but that's about it.
Yeah, I think my background's a lot more different because I did a lot of like content creator like adjacent stuff. Like, I remember back in elementary school, I was basically writing essentially comics, and while the art wasn't necessarily the best, like I believe I got around to like maybe like 30 some issues, and they're like relatively shorter, like newspaper comics. Back in at that time, I liked like Garfield and a few other like random comic stuff at the time, and that kind of explains why I got into like manga and anime later down the line, to be honest, because I just wanted something different. I guess some worked how I thought at the time. As far as when I did content creation, it was around like 2014, and I did a lot of like funny like live action skits. So I did this like parody of Men in Black, but basically I'm working at a call center just waiting for someone to just memory wipe someone, so I just had to hold someone like on a phone. That was the whole gimmick behind that. It's like something you've probably seen like on like College Humor, maybe Smosh is like a one-off bit type of thing.
I was raised on Smosh, so that does sound like a Smosh joke.
And later on, it was weird because I reached a point in 2016 where I met a bunch of like decently high skilled like Pokemon, just general Pokemon YouTubers, and we were doing like an abridged series for like Team 4-Star had like an abridged contest, and at the time I was like, you know what, kind of want to go for it, and unfortunately a lot of that stuff's lost. Like, I'm really sad about that because I wish I kept it, because I had like Bulbatube, I had something named like Pokemon Explains, I think Pro Mario had a few lines, a lot of interesting like collaboration for that, for like a 10-minute like a bridge thing. Like, very weird in hindsight how it got.
Yeah, just having seen a small bit of overview of what went into doing GT abridged, I can only imagine how hellish abridging actually is, like full-time abridging is.
I think what's interesting when I was doing GT abridged with Salajin, Super Saiyan Science, and all of them was that it was weird in context that I was an adult at that point, but I already had some experience with the abridging context. And while I do miss that, I wish I could have actually wrote on earlier episodes. I think it was just how things played out, unfortunately. Like, it was pretty funny. Like, I really wish the last episode, because we have it recorded and everything, just editing would have been a mess, to be honest.
Understandable.
Because literally some of your like best lines were like that when I was writing for that.
It is something that made me want to do more voice acting for sure.
Well, the other thing is, like, I didn't do voice directing like too much before that, and I felt like after like towards the end part, I think we could have done something if copyright wasn't as harsh as it is. But that's just how things go, unfortunately.
I can very much relate to that kind of thing fizzling out. I definitely get it. Definitely get it.
As far as like newer channels go and other projects, so there was a time where SageZ was basically on like this 6 months hiatus. And the thing was, at the time, I didn't want to do too much with my channel. So I ended up starting like a RuneScape channel for a bit. And while I like where it was going, the thing is, like, I wasn't seeing too much like doing it like as a full-time thing. So I'm probably going to do it more as a hobbyist thing. But like, first video hit like 8,000 views, and I got like a couple hundred like on the previous videos. And it's like a small channel. It's like maybe like 300 some subscribers, but it's just something that I did kind of like for fun, get my creativity kind of back up a little bit. And I don't know, might look back into it at some point as far as that goes.
I think that would be cool. I definitely feel that would be cool.
I did want to ask, as someone who's been watching your channel for a while, do you have like something that made you favor like the slower paced storytelling for like max quality style over like faster based content, as that's kind of been in and out, in all honesty, as far as what if content goes?
Something that inspired, I've never been shy to say, like, Moscow is one of my like biggest inspirations in the realm of what ifery, and that's something he and Haverock have really leaned into with their stories, is letting it, if it's for the sake of the story and the story being good and the story feeling like something Toriyama would have liked, yeah, if it has to take a little while, like, let it take a little longer. I think that's one of the big inspirations. I think this is going to sound a little pretentious because I don't want it to sound like this is the same level of work, but I think like looking even just with the little pinhole we have into it at the world of mangaka and like the hellish like lengths they go through for their work, I think my past as an athlete, I think my past like looking at other athletes and listening to other athletes talk about their stuff, it just kind of let me be like, some things you just have to slow burn on. Like, some things, even if it's just you have to go to the gym and, you know, work for 2 months and not see any like a major difference in yourself, and like you get on the scale and you weigh the same, but you packed on more muscle, you actually got heavy, so you feel sad, you still got to go to the gym. It's one of those things where like I guess that inspiration is just, well, I mean, nothing worth doing is easy and quick and is just spit out with no effort. So, you know, the people who want to wait for it or are willing to wait for it and willing to support it definitely show up and definitely show out when I need them to. So I also got encouragement when that decision was made, is another thing to keep in mind. That kind of influenced me to you go full on into that, I guess. And the other thing I want to mention with that is an inspiration, I guess, is the competition I face. Not to say they don't put like a lot of time and effort into it, because they definitely do, and their consistency shows that they do. But like Dragon Ball What Ifs aren't like, quote unquote, you don't need a new Dragon Ball What If because you have so many great ones, right? Like, you can spend all day with the Solid Saiyan playlist and be fine, completely entertained for the entire day. If you were just chilling out and playing some games, you'd be loving it. Mug has such a wide variety of content, so does Carthu. It's not just their what ifs. And then you go to other stuff, it's like Naruto what ifs, quote unquote, have kind of been flooded now because so many people just, snag fan fiction. It's one of those things where if there's already a quantity of different, options, quality is your only weapon at that point. So you fight with quality.
Nah, that's understandable. I will say, as far as quality scale goes, the only person that I've encountered was Professor Chimp. Is the only person that I've encountered that's goes to the same scale as far as thinking it out and outline stuff, because someone who's doing a collab with them, it's we have stuff planned out that goes towards years, because how stuff's written, we outline what we think's gonna happen, and the actual writing is just way longer in scale. Because if the last video, that was supposed to be one big video, but what happened was the actual recording is too long, so we had to split into 2 different videos because of what happened, even though it's the same thing that's happening. I don't know, doing Dragon Ball Martian with them, it's very interesting taking a single element from something and trying to apply it towards everything else, even though it doesn't seem like a big deal at first initially. What was weird with that series is that the first part isn't even about Goku. It's about John Jones and his relationship with the Guardian of Earth and everything. Completely, I would say fan fiction at that point. And it's after that point, the actual what if picks up because of how much preamble had to be set up to make sense. Explain who the Martians are in general audiences, explain how John acts in the world and such. It's interesting when you try to approach something that way, at least from now being more experienced with it, I feel like.
It definitely is. It definitely is.
I think the other time was actually when we're doing I remember for your Stain series, I helped for a little bit of it. That was interesting. It felt a little bit quicker, but I do think that the actual writing process was longer for sure.
My writing process is definitely longer than most, because I can start a script and work on a script for the entirety of the breadth between, especially if it's a video or a series I've been doing for a while, it can be between the last part and the day before I'm deciding to publish it. So I mean, it can be oh, I don't like how I read this line and somebody else heard it that I wanted to just get a read through for, and maybe they gave me an idea and now I'm doing that. So it can be very hectic, to be honest.
So I guess falling into it's how do you come up with your what if scenarios?
Looking at source material is usually my easiest way to do it. There's so many times when you'll be watching something and somebody will just say a line of oh, if you hadn't done X, if you hadn't done Y, and it's oh, okay, that's what if. That's the what if. You're giving it up there. I will look at different series and stories and manga and stuff like that, and that'll always give you some kind of different idea. Even if it is just something as simple as, oh, okay, well, what if I tried to do this kind of story, but with a different character, basically. Watching other what ifs is always a great way to do it, because even though it can get very much repetitive if you're just looking at other people's stuff and trying to figure out a different way to do it that doesn't seem exactly like theirs, it can always give you the concept of, okay, that can always be a fun byproduct that can happen in a what if, or what if that concept that they just touched on could be its own what if. And I feel like that's the way I get most of the inspiration from all what ifs.
So when you research, do you put more time into lore, or do you put more with power scaling, kind of
it's a strong mixture of both, because if your lore is strong, your power scaling is really well informed by it, if that makes sense. So because the changes you're making, if there's really strong character and reasoning behind it, it can make something okay, in this what if, Sakura is a lot stronger, it can make that medicine go down a little easier.
I think it's interesting. I've been dealing with the inverse, with Goku being strong as he would ever be, continuity wise, for Dragon Ball Martian. But because how strong Martians are in DC, Goku does not stand a chance. Because of his focus on instincts and stuff, when fighting, that's what keeps him in the fight. But legitimately, power scaling wise, he doesn't really stand a chance. Unfortunately, with where he's currently at the story, it's just interesting looking many hacks Martians have and what they can do. Just people don't consider that when you try to throw out a character, it's like, oh, yeah, Goku has a chance at them. Well, depends when he's me. Then that makes most sense.
Yeah, it really does. DC is extremely high tier feeling, just partially because it's just been going on for so long.
I did want to ask, how do you like balance staying true with the storyline, but also introducing like your creative changes for your scenarios?
Most of the time I do not. I feel like I don't a lot of the time. I feel like sometimes I might it'll take a lot of reassurance from somebody being like, no, I feel like that's really compelling, or I feel like that's worth that change for me to feel enough confidence to be like, all right, cool enough, we'll do it. The way I try and balance it is usually there will be so much hand waving for some kind of stuff that it's fine to something. Like it, for the most part, you're fine. Yeah, that's probably what I do. I look for reassurance, and for the most part, I'll like look at the source material and I'll look at how I felt about source material at that time. So if it's something like, okay, it's hypothetically, it's what if Gohan went Super Saiyan on Namek instead of Goku? Like, how would a reader have actually felt about that at the time? What about the story so far had led up to something like that? And there are like seeds and pieces you could use for that.
Yeah, I can understand that. I think the biggest thing that I've dealt with when doing what ifs is trying to balance like humor and try to keep certain like as far as like pacing issues, because I try to get closer to when the next thing happens. So when I'm doing stuff with other people, I feel like there's like a bit of better balance in some aspects. Because
no, I kind of get you even with that difficulty explaining. I kind of understand.
And I think the other point is like there was a point where I was just doing a lot more like darker scenarios, which was very interesting. Like I'll probably revisit them later, but one of them, I don't know if you ever saw it, but the idea was like, do you remember when Luffy was trying to save like Ace and such during that arc? So there was one point where Doflamingo is basically told to go like kill Moria, essentially. So my idea was like with Mihawk being there, he basically tells Perona, oh, unfortunately, Moria's dead, because that's the perception he got, even though he's not dead. And that basically pushes Perona to want to go as, like, Zoro, and eventually, like, have this interesting, like, vengeance arc type of deal. Because, like, having her join as Straw Hats, you kind of have to come up with a motive, and I thought that kind of works. And I got up to the point, like, in the rhyme where he's supposed to confront Doflamingo. And with her being, like, a gag character, she can do a lot of more interesting stuff, I think, with her abilities. But the other things you have to consider, like scaling and such, and that's I think where it fell apart, unfortunately.
Yeah, gags and like comedy in writing is so interesting because you have to have a lot of confidence in your sense of humor either being one that is more universally appealing than it might be, or that everyone gets the joke in the same way you get the joke. And a lot of the time that's not going to happen. So it becomes this like really interesting tug of war between, do I make my jokes and my humor like way too milquetoast and predictable and like that's a joke anybody would make, or do I like lean more into like the things that would make me laugh personally? I think that's also a really interesting like thing to kind of struggle with, and that can also lead to a lot of inspiration, I feel like.
Oh yeah. Speaking of that, do you face challenges like maintain consistency or coherence with your videos?
Like logical consistency, I feel like I don't have too much trouble maintaining. When it comes to like the consistency of uploading or incoherency, I don't feel like I have too much issue maintaining for the most part. I try to ground the scenarios and like stories I do fairly well. I don't know if I succeed all that well, but I think I do a decent enough job. And in my experience, like most times I'll feel like I've made an inconsistency. It's something where it's lore or it's like a premise that I either wasn't familiar with in the first place, so that becomes more of a issue of just ignorance rather than the creativity got too out of whack, and that kind of led to that. Or it'll be a thing of like, it's somebody else's interpretation of like, oh, I don't think that's how that went. And it might be well, you didn't really understand the source material, which I love my community and I love the Dragon Ball fans don't read memes, but they are kind of true.
I think sometimes it can also be a difference of like writer's opinion. Doing like my series for like Staying Trained Deku, my premise was more the inverse of what you had. Idea is more like Jack is able to convince Stain to turn good. My idea was more like, well, Stain's trying to push a point to Deku. It's like maybe heroes aren't as good as what he views them to be. And that pushes him going down a path that he essentially would regret was the idea where I was going to take it with, but just didn't resolve, unfortunately.
No, I definitely get that. Even my version of that story has been very hard to tell.
Because it's like, the idea is I didn't want to completely lose like Deku as a core character. My idea is more like the idea of examining like the aspect of what it means as far as like what justice means. And the idea was later is that he just got realized justice isn't always perfect, but the way like Stain was going about it doesn't give like a fair trial was the idea. I was gonna go with it. And that basically gets him out of the loop that he was in.
It's a really interesting like tug of war, because it's a lot of that that Daredevil and Punisher kind of thing, where it's like these two characters fundamentally do not disagree with each other. It is more so they disagree with the methods that they want to go about things with, because they have reached like different phases of the same journey. That makes sense.
Deku would have been more of like a Daredevil than like a Punisher, eventually. Like he'd be like, you know what, Stain, I understand where you're trying to come from, but in all honesty, you're not giving people a fair shot. Like that's literally what it's gonna wrap up into. And I did want to say something that's interesting, like with My Hero's like manga ending and also like anime. Do you think like the upcoming like Vigilantes anime, do you think it'll cause a new surge for what if for MHA?
Yeah, more than likely. Also because even like with the memes that were made, I feel like it probably won't die off. Like I don't think My Hero, because I'm also of the impression My Hero has never actually been defined by its manga. In the grand scheme of things, the anime has always been what defined it. And I feel like there's going to be a lot, because we already got the changes at the end of the volume. I feel there's going to be a lot of changes in the quote unquote source material at that point, because everybody will be looking at the anime more so than the manga.
The weird thing for me is like the main thing that defined My Hero for me was later with Horikoshi's like art style advancing. And I think what bothered me is that the anime didn't reflect that at points. Like I understand that though, because you have to keep consistency with art design, but like seeing like One Piece and other anime shift art styles, it's like, I mean, you could have improved stuff, but it's whatever. At this point, I'm not too upset with it anymore.
Yeah, and I look at that more as like the staff had kind of gotten very, very comfortable with that design or that like visual style. And for some of the anime, especially when we got to some of the like first parts of the Final War arc stuff, like Endeavor versus All for One, they're still really good at doing stuff in that visual style. So it became kind of a thing of like, I don't necessarily mind that it's not going to reflect. That might still remain to be seen. We haven't seen anything from the final season, so there could still be hope. Yeah, I think My Hero will probably go right. Like I won't say it'll go right back up to the height it was at, because My Hero faced a really interesting thing of like, I think overzealous fandom, which is something all series and fandoms have, is an overzealous fandom. Like there's going to be an overzealous fan to whatever convention you go to. I think that gave like kind of passed off as cringe from a lot of people, probably just wouldn't get a chance in the first place. And then the ending did not help that. Did not help that accusation at all.
I think at least what I initially thought as far as like anime hype went was like, yeah, the story wasn't going a direction what some people wanted, but the other thing was like superhero fatigue felt like it was sitting in around like season 4, season 5, around that range. Because I remember other people talking to, like, they just weren't interested in like general like superhero stuff, and unfortunately MHA kind of fell into that because of its genre essentially.
Yeah, and I'm still like wrestling with whether I feel like genre fatigue is a real thing, because to me, I don't feel like the spaghetti western has ever like truly gone out of fashion. Logan remains to be like one of my favorite movies, and it's one of those things that like if you ask a lot of people, like they got to no, I am so done with like cowboy flicks. If I see another cowboy flick, I will puke. I can't. But then you have people who grew up on, that's like all they will watch all day is, no, I'm going to put on a channel that like exclusively shows that kind of stuff. So I go back and forth with like whether genre fatigue is a real thing, Because yeah, superhero fatigue really does for sure have an impact on how people felt about MHA. Like you could tell that by the critique I saw a lot of people say of like they wanted some consequence from the end battle, which I think is totally fine. But one of the things I remember being said was they wanted the consequence of Deku either loses his arms or he loses the battle. I'm like, okay, but no, I feel like, or it wasn't that. It was, I remember some kind of mutually exclusive like complaint about the ending. And I feel like the thing with Aerie is it's going to be a hit or miss for like however you feel about it. Once she was introduced, I feel like that was all we used as a Deus Ex Machina at some point. You'll just have to accept it. So I was kind of ready for that.
Oh yeah, I think it's similar like to other stuff, but I think it was a more unique circumstance with MHA, especially at least how it was over here, like in like America. I don't know how other
in America, its American audience is also a big reason as to why its perception got so changed, and also because it is such an American, like a West coded show. Everything from like the main attack name is Detroit Smash.
Yeah, I think I am excited to. I do want to watch the newer movie. I haven't got a chance to see it, so
I haven't either, so I'm right there with you.
I'm still looking forward to the final season, to be honest.
I'm looking forward to the final season, and I'm convinced they will do a movie that'll be like a true. They'll do a Boruto. I wouldn't be surprised if they did a last style movie for My Hero and then did a Boruto style movie for My Hero. Not even like setting up a like actual sequel, just more so to inhabit that space that the final volume kind of teases you with.
Yeah, I could possibly see that. I think one other complaint with MHA is that it was more like the time scale for stuff. Like people were saying, like it should have took place over a longer period of time, which I kind of get that more. Like,
yeah, I get that. Dark Deku should have been on all of its own, and I hold to that.
Like it just felt, that arc especially just felt really quick. Like how it went.
It's quick. It's not even feels quick. It's quick. Like Bakugo shows up quick, if that makes sense. Like,
oh yeah,
not even just the arc is quick. Like a familiar face for Deku to lean on in like a moment of need shows up. Like All Might is there really, really quick. I remember one of the Pickle and I talked about the Dark Deku arc a lot, and something we both agreed with was when it started and like we got the little flashes of Stain and stuff, I actually had that real conceited thought of like, are they actually about to do Stain is training Deku, and like that's who he's like listening to right now? He's like left the school and he's not like listening, like he's not like doing Stain's bidding, but like Stain is his guy in the chair right now because he knows how to go through the deep underbelly of the criminal world and get away with stuff. But no, it was still All Might. So it's like, okay, like it hasn't really changed that much. This is basically just like he's gone like a little bit mini rogue, but he's still like sanctioned, which is kind of, it isn't like really leaning into it.
It's weird because, like, you know, if you brought up, you know, going with what we know with Stain's character, he theoretically could just impose the idea. It's like, this is what I think a hero represents. Yeah, well, very interesting.
Before I lose this train of thought, I do want to mention something, and it is a piece of consistency with this criticism. Another arc that I feel, and this is modern shonen, another arc that I feel like is way too quick is in Black Clover. I believe it's after, you know exactly what I'm about to say. I believe it's after, what is it, Lucifer or something like that. It's like one of the first major villains that like all the Magic Knight squads have to come together to fight. And then Asta goes on trial afterwards. And they're like, oh yeah, you're getting kicked out of the kingdom. You're a devil. You're kicked. And I'm like, okay, cool. This is so hype because the Black Bulls show up and they're like, nah, you mess with one of us, you mess with all of us. So I guess the whole squad is going to be rogue now. And then like by the next chapter, they're like, no, we're not doing that. You're fine. I feel like, and I love Tabata. I love Black Clover so much. If like there'll never be another big three, but if I had to make another big three, Tabata's work is going to be in it. And that was one that rung to me like, that could have been a year of manga. Is just like, okay, the Black Bulls are now a rogue squad, like on the outskirts of the magic capital, training and like having some like minor beefs with the actual like official squads. But no, we just get past that. So it's something that I feel like that might just be, hey, an editor came in and told them sales dipped by like 0.25% rather than 22%, and we don't like that, so stop that. We're not going to do this whole arc on that. And they do it.
You gotta be honest, that series, the Elf arc, was amazing. I don't know later on, with as far as anime progress goes, I don't know if they're gonna top that. But I heard it gets good, so I'm
very good. It gets very good. Black Clover fans will eat if they get a consistent anime.
Yeah.
And through them feasting, the rest of the community, the rest of the anime community will therefore feast.
I was just kind of sad, like the last arc was essentially just like a train arc before next big thing. That's essentially what happened.
It's a big training arc, yeah. The stuff, and that's what the last thing the anime was doing too, yeah. It was right after the time skip. Something that also hurt was I feel like the time skip author design does not sell everybody, which I understand. He is very squanch.
Oh yeah, that's understandable.
He is very, very wide.
I did want to ask, with Daima being released, has it changed how you want to approach Dragon Ball, like as a whole?
Not as a whole. It's something like I instantly look at it and I'm like, oh yeah, no, I'm not about to argue the canonicity about this or not. Like, it's something that very obviously was put in as like, you don't have to watch it, but it's very much like supplemental material that for those who are watching it with understanding of like what happened in Super and lore, we get there, and coming back from like, I understand all we got in Z, even if it might have been vague, you're eating, you're feasting, you're enjoying it so much. So I don't know if I would say it like has changed it from the ground up, but I definitely want to involve the Daima stuff when I'm telling a Dragon Ball story and I've reached the Majin Buu saga. If not, if I missed it and some old stuff, I'll probably go back and do Daima specials, like I've done GT specials. I think the joke I made was one of my newer stories is Bardock's family, and I was telling someone like, oh, this is hilarious. I'll get to do probably 3 versions of Kid Bardock in this, because there's the flashback version. There is, if I do a GT special, the GT Bardock, which will probably, still have the actual like signature GT thing. And then if I do Daima, there'll be Daima Bardock. So that's 3 versions of Kid Bardock.
That is kind of funny in that perspective.
Yeah, it's actually kind of hellish because that's already the story I have gotten the most art commissions ever for. So that's hilarious.
When doing Western eras, how do you avoid like doing repetitive patterns and being creative?
How do you avoid repetitive pattern?
Or do you not do that? Because some people just keep like an idea of how they want to do stuff, and they just kind of keep it going. At least that's another perspective I get from.
To an extent, I don't think it's completely possible to avoid it. I think that's one of the things to keep in mind. And then to another extent, I think that also kind of ties back into your inspiration. So like, I'll watch a bunch of different anime. If there's like a story you're struggling to figure out choreography for, or a like certain MacGuffin, or like a certain like setup for a tournament, watch some different anime. Or just watch some different stories or different sports. I was having trouble thinking of different ways to do or like structure the Chunin exams in Naruto at one point. I watched Blue Lock. They have something called a rival battle in there, where it's like you're going through a tourney, but you're losing members and gaining members based on if you win or lose, and you're building yourself a team from that. That's a great idea, especially in the Chunin exams where it's a bunch of ninja, and the whole idea is being collaborative and being able to work together and use like ultimate ninjutsus together like you see in the Storm games. So the idea of like going through a round robin and having to like build a team from the actual like classic Chunin exam roster of like, okay, you got wild cards like Gara on there. You have all these differing personalities and stuff like that. That really helped with that. I was having trouble like trying to figure out specific choreography of a fight in that Bardock story at one point. And I was hosting one of my older uncles, and my dad and I were like sitting on the back porch and just chilling. And I believe they just asked me to put something on. I threw on Hajime no Ippo because on Netflix. And there is a moment like really early on in one of his early spars in that when he gets knocked down, he beats his own legs to get the feeling back in. I'm like, oh, that's such a fun thing. So I put that in a story. It is not something that has to be in the realm of boxing. It's just I have to get back up and continue the fight. And that's something you see in a lot of stuff. Like, I'm going to hurt myself to wake myself out of the pain, but there's different ways to do it. So you'll still be repetitive in some ways, but there's always a different way to make it to mask that repetition. A really easy way I can give as like a tip, especially for writers, is find a different way to say what you're trying to say every other sentence. So if you're describing Deku, Izuku the first time, the next time you're gonna say or mention him Midoriya, Deku, the green-haired boy, the ninth holder. You keep going like that until you run out of different aliases to use by, and then you start recycling them. Don't say he punches him again. Say he strikes him. He he whips him with. There's ways to word things. Yeah, synonyms. Synonyms are great. Antonyms are great. Very, very useful. Alliteration is fun. Something I've done. This is a great one. This is a great tip. Something I've started doing is actually cheating. If I'm telling a Dragon Ball story, I will open up the Dokkan wiki and I will go to a character I might be describing. Like, say I'm looking at Piccolo. I'll go to him and they have the little character skills are like skill links. And they're just little fun descriptors like a fierce battle, solid support. And there's ways you can throw that stuff in a script to kind of just give your language a lot more flavor. So, as they engage in a fierce battle at shocking speeds, giving each other solid support, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's not a bad way to go about stuff.
If you can find ways to like describe something with the like same beat or cadence or like lyricization of or like vocalization of like a popular song or something, that's a way to keep something from being stale. If you're like kind of referencing the soundtrack of the video you're using and like as it's happening, that's a cool way to keep things from being stale. It's all kinds of stuff. It's just, what are you working on at that time? What's the coolest thing you can do at that moment in the video? Like every second of the video until the video's over.
So I know a lot of people now do like art commissions for thumbnails, but what do you think makes a good thumbnail for what if scenario content?
Oh man, YouTube tries to tell us like every other month, don't they? Where they'll like give you a little thumbnail like grade report card thing, and it's like, okay, here's your thumbnail next to a bunch of your competitors who are doing like quote unquote similar content. So I do not know. I will get complimented on my thumbnails and I'll brag on my thumbnails sometimes, and most of the time it is like getting commissioned art and thinking of a good way to stage something or having the commissioned art be a reference to something that can really sell it. But what makes a good thumbnail in what ifs, to me, what makes a good thumbnail is number one is conveying what's going to happen in the story. Like obviously you don't want clickbait. Two, something that is eye-catching. If you're telling a story about Goku, cool. However, like Dragon Ball Z is a story about Goku. So in that case, like if it's just Goku in his normal gi with Super Saiyan, you might not get too many clicks just because I've seen Goku in his normal gi with Super Saiyan. But based on like what the context is and what you do, you can do better stuff. So like there's a lot of those Naruto fan fictions that are just like the scummier ones are like Naruto and then just like some like it's just hentai art, just like clipped hentai art.
Yeah.
And
it's
then,
really bad.
It's really bad. It's really bad. And then sometimes you'll get like stolen fan art, and that's like I guess that's a little bit higher on the totem pole. And then sometimes you get like, I'm just going to take a Naruto render and I'm going to make the clothes green and we're going to leave it at that and it's cool. It's like, okay, cool. And that's like, if it is the context, I feel like that is a good thumbnail. If it's telling you like, this is Naruto as a new Uchiha, so he has to wear black clothes or blue clothes and he has the Uchiha symbol and his hair is black. Okay, that's conveying what you're talking about. That's an interesting change in the story. That's not the original story. And then also like how you place text. I feel like that's a big one.
Yeah,
it's a very big one to me. I've tried like a bunch of different styles. I've tried on the first part of a series that'll have the full title, and then the parts succeeding that won't have the title. They'll just have a part. So you see it in the playlist. It looks really pretty. I've had like mixed success on that, but that's still my favorite way to do it. So yeah, the titling and staging and scaling and all that kind of stuff is really big, really big to me. But yeah, I guess a good thumbnail is whatever the algorithm decides to bless that day.
Because a lot of people have come and it's like, I don't know. Like I've seen videos.
No one knows. I feel like the here's the blank, I guess thumbnail is like a very genuine, like, I don't know a different way to make this look interesting. I'm describing what I'm about to do, and that's all the thumbnail is needed for. Like you saw the card, this is the entire story of Dragon Ball Z, I get. That's a very like genuine, like, I don't know a different way to stage this that would be, what you need. And it works because it's like a simplistic thing that's like, okay, that's what I'm clicking on the video for. So cool. That's all I want.
I think I've seen a lot of different ways people are going about stuff, but I do think that some point people figure out how they want to go about things. Because if you're an artist or someone who like makes content, I think you'll figure out like a style if you want.
Yeah, signature style, that concept.
And even if you don't have one, I think the best way is to just, again, like I said, like more look at other stuff, just see what's working, what's not.
Yeah, you're looking at different pieces of inspiration is probably
like what if thumbnails. I would just look at thumbnails in general.
Yeah, thumbnails in general. Thumbnails in general. What do you see that makes you like, even if it's something you have no interest in? Because that's the beauty of YouTube, is like finding a 7-hour like video essay about something you have never played or don't know a thing about. And if you're being honest, you probably don't care. You probably want something thrown in the background. But by hour 3, you're like, this is riveting. This is actually like compelling content. I am locking in for the next 4 hours. That tier of like compelling thumbnail is, yeah, just looking everywhere.
That's the problem, because people watch so much content, you don't remember what you've seen before. Like, I remember back when I cared about like YouTube draw stuff. Like, I can't tell you how many videos I watch and which ones I care about now, because I genuinely don't as much.
Yeah, going back through your history is rough. They tried to fix it a little bit recently because they've distinguished shorts from long form video, but now long form video and shorts are teetering further and further closer together.
I'm very curious if, I don't know if YouTube will do this, but I'm wondering if they'll do something like YouTube Kids where they make it a separate website, because I feel like the algorithm.
I wouldn't be, honestly, I think it legitimately depends on what happens to TikTok in the next 90 days, which I think it's probably sticking around.
It is funny who we have as the current bidders. Like, I'll talk a little bit about this since it's on subject bit. So we have like Mr. Beast. It's like, okay. We have Kevin O'Leary, Elon Musk, and like one other like billionaire guy. I don't know.
Which is hilarious because I think I looked it up, but Kevin O'Leary cannot go band for band with anybody in the conversation. He cannot afford TikTok. I'm sorry. Not even the American side of TikTok. It's so fun.
I feel like the best odds, like for him, he would have to team up like with Mr. Beast and like the other guy, kind of like,
yeah, there's no good coalition.
Like, all right, guys,
with it.
We're making a team here.
So that's funny. That's also been deciding like whether or not I want to go ahead and get on there, because like it's such a massive platform, and I can't be an old man forever. I mean, I will be, but I can't be this crotchety and old, and like I don't want to get with the times because it's only growing while YouTube is trying to like. I've noticed that so much more now. Like YouTube is so much we are reacting to everything else more of the time. And it also feels like if I'm not on TikTok, somebody's going to steal my content and upload it there.
I literally plan to do like an archive type of channel for like anime series stuff and just upload on TikTok. Like, I'm literally planning that. But as far as me posting there, I kind of just want to see how that experiment goes first, because it's going to be entirely new audience, like just seeing stuff, because I use support long form content and such now. So I'm very curious how that experiment will go once it gets.
Yeah, that's it. Everything's drifting together. Everything is just.
One interesting thing to notice as far as what if content is like the shift with more like podcast styles, like what Pickle Dill does, like similar to what I'm starting now. I'm basically started up like a separate podcast thing where I have a different guest on. We talk about a different show each episode, like, and then playing that out. Like, how you feel about that shift? It feels like, 'cause I feel like other people have been doing it too, like Bruna and such.
I feel like it's the most logical thing of the world, because if you, I know viewers probably have set in through like, watch me, make a video of a ton of content, not just, for whatevers, but if you do it for whatever, if you do it for somebody who does content like me, you might get that vibe like, after a certain point, this is just the editing of like really early anime. Like it is the same level of like movement and like new images and like animation and all that kind of stuff. So it becomes not completely. I'm being very pretentious again, but like to a very near extent, you are like damn near working on every frame of something, almost like an animator. I know that sounds conceited, but it's especially like at that scale of like, okay, well, I want, if you're like me, I want like every frame of the video to be somewhat interesting. Like if your attention is being dragged away, it's possible you're going to see one of those other thumbnails that might be able to grab your attention earlier, and then you're gone and you might not come back and watch the video. So, the incentive there is don't let that even happen. They devour the viewer attention completely. Don't let them pull away for 1 second.
I think what's interesting to me, a little scary, a little interesting, is that I don't like the term Mr. Beastification of YouTube. I don't view it that way, but it's more that creating the editing style that he did essentially with having something happen every so often. Even like he said, like in like a podcast interview, he regret doing that because he's trying to do stuff where he doesn't have to do that. I assume it's a money thing because knowing him, I assume that's what it is. Like trying to pay editors, like putting that many edits in, like it would be a pretty high cost. I feel like realistic.
No, it is because it's like it's exhausting. That idea of like everything has to like consistently, and it gets to like a very like new age like style of content that I don't think everybody enjoys.
Yeah, that's kind of how I was thinking about it recently. I really hope though it shifts back more towards like necessarily like where Markiplier was, but like a bit earlier before it came. 'Cause it felt like a nice balance of like good editing, like good pacing, like not trying to just force my attention. Because sometimes when that was happening to me, I just left videos.
It happens to me as well. That's what I'm saying. We'll have to see because I wouldn't even call it the Mr. I've never used that term. The way I look at it is it's the YouTube kidsification of like it's the Elsa gatification of YouTube. It's that idea of like everything has to be kids content, and now the kids who grew up on kids content are like older and they're making their own content now. So like that's just kind of how content isn't. That's just their content. It's not even like different. That's just how it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be like a very constant like Dora the Explorer, not even to be patronizing, but like in that way of like I'm giving the audience something to interact with as constantly as I can.
Yeah. I mean, like maybe it should be more like with YouTube's viewer interaction. Like I think if they push like comments more in other aspects, like maybe they would get more what they actually want. It just seems weird trying to throw it on certain creators. Like, yeah, you're gonna get some people to do it, but it's clearly like getting rid of a lot of like decent legacy people from what I've seen. Like just a bunch of channels I watch, like either no longer do stuff, retired. Like it's just interesting.
I mean, that's been a question. Like, is the old guard of YouTube like truly going? Yeah, to an extent. Like, yeah, it's been around for 20 years. Like, it's people are getting older. So I mean, it's one of those things of like time is inevitably gonna claim us all, even if it's just our YouTube personas. And like that YouTube persona is so much like a part of the character of everything, even just the editing. So I think it might shift back. I think it might stabilize. I think there might be some kind of middle ground. It might get worse. Skibbity toilet is already out of fashion. There will be something different soon. So I don't know what to expect anymore. And that was already very surprising to me it wasn't surprising. I'm trying very hard not to fall into an old man. Like I'm already reaching, I'm 25 now, or I'll be 25 in 7 months. So I'm entering like the end of Big Bro era, and I'm about to reach Unk era, and I want to be very careful about my Unk era.
I think for me, I'm just really curious, like what it is, but it's more like, do I want to do that when I could watch like better like anime? It's like new stuff that's out. It's like I'd rather do that. That's how I be on it. People who genuinely like it, and it's very interesting when they talk about it. But
it's another time, Skibbity Toilet is another one of those things where it's like there are some people who can attribute meaning to this and like pull like actual like meaningful commentary out of it. So I mean, I don't disparage it by any means. If you like it, I love it.
I think my thing is like it's more like a time investment thing. Like, do I want to do it or not? And it's like I'm very curious. Like after, I forget who got it. I think it was Michael Bay bought the movie rights, and that's why we're seeing a bunch of like merchandise in stores for it. So I'm very curious, like where we're going with this.
I think there's a movie coming. I think that's the done deal.
Oh yeah, it feels like Star Wars again, like where the merchandise comes out first, and the idea is like to get people in theaters. But will it work? I don't know, to be honest.
Yeah, advertising campaigns are so like marketing is such an interesting thing now because like you can't purposefully market anymore. You can, but you can't. Does that make sense? Like you can.
How would you put it?
The way I would put it is like the idea of an industry plant. I feel like is no like it still works. Like you can still have an industry plan, but the idea of like building somebody like in a lab to have a personality and entertain in a certain way that will be like as interesting and as compelling to as many different like demographics and people and across as many different beliefs, and just everybody come in and you'll just all love me. I feel like that's so much harder now. It has to be so much more of a genuine thing, because so many people feel like authenticity and being genuine is like the biggest thing above all else, and that the small windows we get into like creators' lives are true like ways to see that authenticity and genuine, you know, sentiment. So it's really interesting. But yeah, I don't think you can like you can force marketing anymore. Marketing has to be like very like you remember Barbenheimer?
Yeah, I remember that.
Okay, so that happened, and then there were a bunch of studio execs who were like, "Oh, okay, so if we just package movies together like that, people will do double features like all the time like they used to." And it's like, no. It was the like contrast of like pink pastel like girly children's movie versus like grim dark old gritty historical, you know, drama about like one of the worst like evils humanity ever released onto itself. Like that juxtaposition being released on like the exact same weekend and stuff like that was like really, really natural marketing, and that ended up being quote unquote genuine. So like after that, there was like a bunch of other like hashtag, you know, one movie and another movie, and nobody wanted to see it.
Yeah, it really felt really forced.
Yeah. Another great example, because I'm a huge pro wrestling fan, is I never thought I would see a day when The Rock and Hulk Hogan were as like widely disbarred and disliked as they currently are. Just because so many people look at their personas as like completely manufactured. Like I can't take anything you do seriously.
Nah, I can understand that sentiment.
We've reached a point where I feel like more people will look at John Cena and be like, "Oh, that's probably a real person," than they will at The Rock and Hulk Hogan. And John Cena is also a very manufactured personality, but he comes with enough like genuine sentiment and breaking of the kayfabe that you're like, I can buy enough of it.
It's like, yeah, I think he likes China and ice cream.
Yeah, I think he likes China and ice cream. I think that Mandarin was perfect. That Mandarin was crispy.
When you talk about John Cena, that's the one thing I always comes my head. It's like that one clip that was like pushed everywhere.
And Mandarin was crispy. I loved it.
I did want to ask one last thing before we get to community submitted questions. I wanted to ask what is the most important thing when people want to collab with another content creator?
I don't want this to sound basic, but like, would you not say the vibe? Like, it's not just like
fair.
It's the vibe. Like, and vibes are like, they sound like you can say that to somebody and like that sounds so stupid. But sometimes like you can just look at a friend when like I don't know. This is an experience I went through a lot in both college and high school. You can look at a friend and maybe like somebody you don't know sat at a table and you tried to have a conversation, like you genuinely tried to, you know, be friendly, and it was just off, and you like maybe they walk off for a bit and they're like they glance away and you glance at your friend and your friend glances at you, and both of you just have that thought of like, I don't know what it is, but this person's vibes are fucked and I don't want to deal with it. So it's one of those things of like the vibe has to be established like immediately. And then the creativity and the content and the fun from the vibe kind of comes after that, in my opinion.
I think that makes the most sense for sure.
Yeah, I think it's very much the vibe. If you can vibe with somebody, you can make good content with them. Like if you can get into a call and go for multiple hours and not get sick and tired of each other after 10 minutes, you know, that's a vibe. That's a good vibe.
I think my more interesting thing is because I'm relatively like neutral about a lot of things. Like there's a lot of speculation to what people have, but the genuine thing is I'm a very like anti like conflict person, and because of that, that's why you would see me with other people and such, because I just don't feel like going at people like that. That's just how I am usually.
I get that. I definitely get that.
I do think there's some downsides. There's points where people can like walk over me, but at the same time, like I'd rather not run into fighting someone in some aspects.
That's understandable.
To some degree.
And something I've also realized after 7 years I haven't done that many, but I've done enough that have been very in-depth and have been very like workload heavy. Collabs will invite both drama and they will invite both conflict. They are very natural because friendship invites drama and conflict. You think about it. Any relationship invites, by the nature of being a relationship, invites drama and conflict. It will happen. It is just you will have a difference of opinion at some point. Somebody might not have done something in a specific way you need to be done. Somebody's asleep and you're trying to get like a specific render or like a specific like voice clip or something you need, and they're asleep while you're working. So I mean, you just it invites it. It happens. Frustration and all that kind of stuff builds. And you just have to not only know how to like do conflict resolution, but do like restorative conflict resolution. It's that idea of we have to resolve this conflict and be productive because like there is an actual like piece of thing that we want to produce. Like it's not physical, it's a video, but there's something we want to, have come out of this, even if that beat tension. And a lot of the time, tension can add to something being really good. It can be really, really fulfilling and really, really draining for content and for content creators to go through those little bouts. But I think they're both natural, and I think they're both more unavoidable than you want them to be. It's the burning of bridges and like the just mass fallout, and we're gonna turn this like that conflict into content. It's that you want to avoid.
All right, I think it's time we can move on to community submitted questions here. I will say right now, if I mispronounce your username, I am sorry. That's just how things go here.
Listen, we have long passed the days of like Xbox usernames where it's like, I understand it. I might not say what you wrote, but I understand what you said.
All right. So Insane Makushin asked, what's a series you're interested in doing what ifs that you've currently not done yet, even like in shorts? Okay.
That's a very memorable name on my channel. Series I'm currently interested in that I haven't done even in shorts. That's interesting because I think I've hit everything as a short at the very least that I have both interest in and enough knowledge to do something in.
Okay.
I'll say like vaguely the concept of a lot of different like fantasy and sometimes isekai anime. I feel like some of those have good venues for what is, but a lot of the times it's fleeting. Shangri-La Frontier is something I've been getting like I've become a massive fan of that. And there are parts to it that you probably could do what ifs for. So I mean, I guess I'll say that.
The Black Lorax asks, what's the major you've been studying?
I graduated from college in 2020. And I studied marketing and entrepreneurship. And before that, I had studied graphic design. And then before that, I went in for it was going to be a 3-2 program where I would do 3 years at my initial college to get a math and science degree. And then I would go to either Georgia Tech or Auburn University to finish up with an engineering degree once I figured out like a specific route of engineering I wanted to go into. And then I realized that's a lot of math, and I actually hate math more than I thought. So, no.
I think what bothered me is like when I was going to college a bit, it was basically like 2019, then when it's 2020, I just couldn't bring myself to do it anymore.
No, that's really fair. Funny. I very much went to college for my parents, not for myself. And I say this in a very loving way. They really wanted me to have a degree for both their peace of mind, but also for me to have something to fall back on. I was one of those kids who I very much just kind of drifted and was just enjoying like existing rather than like I had a goal and was pursuing it the entirety of my life. When I was like 4, I think that's around the age I can remember becoming like cognizant and actually like being able to interact with the world. And I don't remember having like anything I wanted to do back at that point. And then when I got old enough, I started playing football and was pretty good at it, honestly. I don't usually like to brag about it. I had enough people hype me up about it, like growing up, that I feel like it's bad form, but I was decent enough at it to get scouted by a few colleges. And I played football from pretty much, this is a fun story. I was playing as what was I? 6? I was either 6 or 7, but I was playing as a 6 or 7 year old in 9 and 10 football with like way bigger and stronger kids. I'm a very big guy in general. So that was like one of the paths I kind of played around with at one point. I'm losing my train of thought. I'm sorry.
I think for myself, I'm a very like goal-driven person. I think the problem I had with college, I think I had other stuff that I feel like I want to do, and I think that's probably what you deal with when like you have autism, because I'm very tentative, like focused on different aspects. But the problem is, if I'm trying to be taught something, it's like it just didn't click or connect as well as I wished it did, and I think that also affected issues because I wasn't necessarily bad at what I was doing. I was doing like media, basically what I already do, like for YouTube
yeah.
aspects, because I was learning Audacity. I was going the Premiere route at the time, which at that point I knew how to use Vegas like fairly well. Like I was already editing for people by the year afterwards, but it's just how things played out, I guess.
No, you actually you're my train of thought back. That makes sense because that's exactly what I'm not sure if I'm on the spectrum, but I'm fairly sure I'm on the spectrum.
It's worth looking into if you think you are. I'll say that much.
It's been one of those things where I have gotten enough like reassurances that I probably should at some point. But when I
give you peace of mind, no, really nervous are, honestly, is the best way to put it.
Not too anxious about it, honestly. I'm very at peace with myself.
My things, I know people who are the opposite. Like, there's Robert, tell them, just look into it. You'll feel better afterwards.
Just while we have the platform, there's nothing wrong with you. You're fine. You're loved. But when I got to college, I also tried to, because I got really interested. That's what I was talking about. So I tried YouTube literally the last year of high school when I was heading off to college. It was that summer. I remember being like extremely depressed. And at one point, this is extremely embarrassing, but I'll admit this. I had texted a bunch of Pokemon through Instagram, just in like a depressive like spiral, just like, hey, help me. I don't know what to do. I just want somebody who I like look up to and kind of get some comfort from like watching to give me some advice on what I should do. And never got a response from any of them, which is totally fair. I wouldn't either. Because like that's I can't give you professional help. This seems like you probably need to talk to somebody right now. So it's perfectly fine. But I remember like going through that, and then I turned on a Moscow X video, and I just at some point just got the snap decision like I'm gonna try this. This is why I can't think of anything else. And I made that first video, and then worked to make, I think, 2 or 3 more before I actually went to college, and then got to college and decided, okay, I'll just keep doing it. This will just be my hobby because I didn't necessarily want to do college for myself. And then I started having fun at college and balancing that with YouTube. And that made me kind of interested in seeing if I could use college to improve myself with YouTube, because I had time for electives and stuff like that. And I feel like that was a mistake, mostly because the experience I was getting from YouTube was making those lessons way too easy. So it was one of those things where it's like, you have like orientations and like little guest speakers and stuff where they come in and they're like, hey, make sure like while you're here at college, you're being very productive with all your time and very mindful of the fact that even while you're just chilling out at your dorm and relaxing and there are no classes at that time, you've paid room and board and all these fees, and your time is literally your money here more than ever, and you should use this experience to like really engrave that into you. Which I don't agree with completely, because I think that can actually be a very harmful way to look at life in general. But it was decent advice for the time for sure. So that made that kind of balance a lot more, not hectic, but intentional, I guess. And that gave me the goal of trying to get as good as I could with YouTube. And that gave me the intention of like going through classes. But once you're like in a class for like graphic design and they're like opening Photoshop and like placing stuff there, and you're like doing it faster than anybody else, and while you're so bored, you're opening up the YouTube Studio app. Like at that point, like you might need to do something else with your time with college. So it was all those things where I didn't necessarily have a goal with when I got in there. But other than just get the piece of paper and whatever I get it for, just whatever I get it for, because I've found this is my passion, and apparently I'm decent enough at it that people want me to do it.
I think what's interesting is that I forget which like Let's Player discovered, but when I realized something clicked with me, I was like 14 or something. It's like, if they're being paid to do this is something that I want to like invest time into looking into. And I think that's what changed perspectives. And then later on, like I think around 16, maybe 15, around there, like I went to like a private school, and there's good and bad things. Like good things is I would have not learned like Photoshop, Premiere, other stuff if I went to like public school. The bad things, I didn't have very many like support stuff, because what people don't get when you go to private school and like public school, if you have like a mental disability, you have other people that will way more help you in public school and private school, because private school doesn't fund that. Or they more care about producing like the best of the best type of people, like really intelligent, really good at football. Like that's literally what the vibe was. Like,
oh no, brother, I know. I was homeschooled from like pre-K age to when it was time to go to, what was it, 10th grade? No, 5th grade. When it was 5th grade, I went to a private school, and then I did that for nearly 3 years, and then I finally went to a public school and did public school for the rest of the things. I did the full spectrum. I did everything but charter school.
Yeah, I
even did dual enrollment.
I think I would have probably preferred like a charter school potentially, because I would have had ways to balance time for myself possibly, but those are way more expensive. Like
they're so expensive, but like for really creative kids who are having thoughts like, oh, they're like people I like watching on YouTube getting paid for it, like I kind of want to pursue something like that. For those kids, like a charter school probably is honestly like one of the best setups they could be in, because so much of their time is their own.
Yeah, because even looking back, like now, it's like that's not a normal thought some kid would just have. Like that was very weird. Why I thought doing
it's very intentional, if nothing else, for sure. It's very much like it's mature and intentional in the way of I have enough interest in it, even if I don't need that interest currently. I'll keep an open mind about that.
Yeah, I think if I would, like, but going back to like college stuff, I think the only thing it would mostly have to end up being is like refining, just having something on paper saying I can do something. That's literally, unfortunately, what it would be for me, and that's what causing like a struggle for me. It's like, do I want to invest that much time, money into something in that aspect? Which I might have to. Depends how it goes.
It's a totally reasonable, tug of war to go through. Just because I've been through it, and like I said, I got it from my parents. How proud they were and how assured they were that this would help me out. That was kind of priceless. I couldn't really put a price tag on that. At the exact same time, the debt afterwards, I can't put a price tag on. So, isn't. Yeah.
I think it's more interesting because I think my parents want me to do something, but at the same time, with how my personality and stuff contrasts with stuff, like it would be a very like rough process. I feel like realistically,
that's understandable.
I did want to ask a few other questions here from Glitcher X. There's a bunch of numbers. What is your main plan for your what ifs? Like, what I mean is like seeing any new ones, like old ones saying like
a current roadmap for the channel, basically.
Yeah, like, oh, they're all, that was interesting. I remember those was the second half of their question. They asked like, are you interested in doing like anime with like sports or like horror as well? Since that is true.
Probably since I want to say like that last year of college, which is 2023, which is bring everything that's currently on the channel to a close so I can start new stuff, because I don't know if you've explained this with like other what ifs before, just yourself, but the way it usually works for me is the first part of anything is going to be the best performing until I get a full story out. And then from there, the way I determine a healthy series is if the first part had 10,000 views and the second part gets 5,000 views within like a reasonable amount of time, and then the third part 2,500, and then 1,000 or 1,250 after that, and then you keep going from there, you're probably doing all right enough. Like not great, but you're probably doing all right enough, and there's probably enough steam to that still, because it kind of suggests that, in my experience at least, when you do the full story, the interest you got from the first part will be there like tenfold at least, so you might see 100,000 on the full story.
Yeah, I think what's interesting talking to other people, because people are asking me advice and stuff, they're noticing the same drop off, and the thing that I told them that like other YouTube coach people I'm talking to about, the main thing that, at least for this year, like I think from my perspective, I do think what ifs are going to pick up again, but it's going to be more in the format, more for full stories and like one shots. I think are going to be more of a big thing this year, because you can have the same intriguing interest like as with like a part one video, like you said, as long as your premise is good enough to do that. And with shorter series, like I'd say like Death Note, for example, or like other short form anime, you could realistically do that. Is the thing, but longer, way more difficult to do that because like
Yeah, that rings true completely. If I did like a different topic every day and it wasn't something that had to drag through from the last video, I could probably be at a way higher number right now in terms of subs.
so that's one thing I'm considering at the moment. But there's just it's like, am I creative enough to do that all the time? It's like, I don't know. That's the thing.
Yeah, it's a creativity question. It's a consistency question. It's another question of scale. It's another question of, is there enough like workload or like working power for me to knock it all out by myself, or do I have to offload something to somebody else just to work at that kind of pace?
I think the big thing for me is like, if I were to do like full stories, for example, I think realistically I could do it, but the thing is like, how much time would it take to do stuff? Because I'd have to become way more efficient at doing it, and that's just something that I'm not sure. At least this year, maybe next year I could consider it, but that's just something I've been thinking about.
No, that's understandable. I still maintain the thought process of I'm always trying to get better per video, but it's been very hard to do that now, and I fear that I'm hitting my peak. And it's not even true that I am. I just need to probably, yeah, I got to figure out some different ways of doing stuff, because I don't necessarily want to get to the point where I've reached my peak just yet.
I think the best way to describe it, like, this is more insight to like how Smugstick and other like mega scale channels kind of run things. But what happens is they get other writers, editors, that way they can have more time themselves to process the initial idea. Is the best way they told me it, and that makes a whole lot of sense once you reach that point. But it's like,
yeah, I got that, and I've also had a bunch of offers from people to do stuff to kind of help me increase scale. The issue is just I currently don't make enough from YouTube. Like I think it's the first time I've ever posted anything that like had my like earnings in it. But I was trying to celebrate I hit 71K the other day, and I just sent a big screenshot that had like my full YouTube thing on it. So that might be one of the first times like most of my community has ever seen like, oh, okay, it's not that much. But like as of right now, I couldn't feed the channel and then compensate anyone for like the amount of work I'd be giving them at the sheer like duration of work I'd be giving them, because most of my videos go on so hellishly long. It became a thing of like the only way to make probably just to atlas it and just put it all on your own back.
I think there is downsides though doing that.
Oh, no, I can attest there being downsides.
Yeah, I've seen channels they do that and they're just gone. They don't exist anymore, or they just restart essentially. Like that's, I think the interview that I always go back to people, like if someone asks me, like, should they do what if content? I always go back to Anime X Broken Ronin one they've done, because it gives you a really strong insight what it means to do it as long as he did it, and what it means to switch and do something else. Like that's a very powerful one for me. Like I always go back to that one.
I'm definitely an outlier with how old my channel has gotten, with
like you said,
the lack of success it has.
Differently.
True. Like the listed date isn't the actual date, but even like, again, going on the 7th year, 7 years, and technically, if you want to break it down, I've gotten 10,000 subs a year. So I mean, a lot of people would deem this a failed experiment by now, cut their losses. I feel like for like whatever reason it might be, and I've definitely gotten close to that point for sure, and had my days of like, I shouldn't be in the comments, but I'm in the comments, and they're not making me feel. Yeah, I can definitely attest to like putting it all on your own back is not the optimal way to do it, but there are those situations where you don't get the turnout or like the setup that you want. You're gonna get the setup that you have, and it's just you got to play with the cards you dealt.
Yeah, I understand that. I understand back when Anime SageZ quit, and actually, it's interesting. Like now, being new art for a channel, knowing backends being there for as long as I had been, I think there's a testament the fact that I was willing to try to continue your channel. I think it's more the fact that you just have to understand when, like, the audience changed, when you need to do different stuff. Because the thing is, we were trying. Like, he wanted to do non-woe stuff, and the thing is, we just didn't pivot at a good enough time bouncing out. That's just realistically what happened. We just lost retention, and now it's not as bad, but that's mostly because I'm moving content away. So whatever's left is what YouTube gives the people. That's the best way to put it. So that's the best way to put that. See, oh yeah, right here, Pineapple Phil. He asked, "What's your favorite anime?" Let's go with that.
This is the same answer I have for like what my favorite what if is. It's so hard. It's like choosing your favorite kid, and it usually depends on like what I've watched last. Favorite anime. It's a tough question. It would probably end up being either a nostalgia bias answer or a recency bias answer, to be completely honest with you. So I might say something
my
like
recency bias right now is Monster. I really like how the story structured. It felt like a really fun investigative story, but also following the people who are being examined. It's just something that you don't get from anything else, I felt like.
I've yet to read Monster, but I get what you mean.
Yeah, I was trying not to spoil it because I assume
I appreciate
you've
that.
not seen it.
I appreciate that. My nostalgia bias answer probably be either Inuyasha, because it's one of those ones that like, has that shared experience of waking up during the ending playing, and or maybe the original Digimon Adventure, because I had that same experience with that. Just during weekdays, like I would wake up and that would be playing. And then my recency bias would probably be, I mentioned it once. Shangri-La Frontier been hitting really well. The second season, I feel like might not be as well animated as the first, but I've been really enjoying it. Mostly just the lore. I feel like it is like that kind of speculative gaming fiction that Sword Art Online kind of wished it could be. Because when I go back to it and I look at the two, like one of these is not like the other in the way of like the concept for Sword Art is very, very plain.
I would say nostalgia for me right now is surprisingly Lupin the Third, which is weird.
Great choice.
Well, here's the thing. I understand the older series has its problems, obviously, like when people ask me about that. But at the same time, it's more like stuff got better later, to be honest, and they don't hold as bad. Fortunately, it's hard to talk about it. I will say that some aspects.
That's fair. Classic anime, even despite its flaws, have become such a vibe and aesthetic now that I feel like a lot of the stuff I used to dislike heavily, I now not so much as like it's a product of its time. Like I should hand wave away the criticism more so in like it is when it is the case of something charming. It's one of those charming like little scuff marks you'll find on certain things, and in the case of it's being something that's like kind of like a glaring like issue or like it didn't age well, it's like that's a product of its time, and we can use this as a launching point to have conversations about it that will make us better in this time. Is kind of the way you can look at this.
Oh yeah, that's for sure. I think one of those recently for me was Seven Deadly Sins, because surprisingly a lot of the main characters are pretty bad people in a lot of context.
Yeah. And then they're like out of context, like manga certain lines, and it's like, should you be saying that in that way while looking like that while holding a baby, Meliodas? Should you be saying that? And he shouldn't. Meliodas shouldn't have said what he said.
I think another one that sucked for me was with Vampire Knight, because what happened was the anime only covered up to a certain point. If you go to the manga, it gets really bad with like incest, and that's just like with vampire stuff, you expect age gap stuff, unfortunately. Like that's what comes with the territory, but it got way
unfortunately.
And I'm glad I didn't read the manga. That's the only good thing I can say about that, because when the anime died, that's kind of where my interest dropped until like a YouTube video. It's like, oh, you remember this thing? It's like, yeah, that's the other side of that coin, I guess. There are some things that are just I've never read it myself, and I don't know much about it other than the video essay I've seen about it from I think it's called a channel called Low Art. They do a lot of like retrospective stuff, and I believe like their big like most recognizable thing is they've been doing a breakdown of the classic Archie Sonic comics, but they have this video on
I think it's just a manga, Usagi Drop or something like. It is Usagi Drop, and apparently the premise of that is like a child is adopted and then raised, and there's like a time skip where that child becomes a grown adult, and then that grown adult has a romance arc, and then it's revealed like the romance arc is with the adult that adopted her. It's like, oh, why are we doing this? And it feels like for at one point during the story, it's like, okay, the story is going to be correcting this and putting her like on like fixing these feelings and like having a difficult conversation about that. Cool. That's not what it is. They're leaning into this, and that's what they're doing. So it's, you just gotta, you drop the whole thing. You drop the whole thing.
Yeah, I think that's what hurts most. Like, you have stuff that invests you in, and then you realize that it's really bad.
Yeah, and for whatever reason, you just can't enjoy. Ask a Kenshin fan. They can tell you. Ask a Rurouni Kenshin fan. They can tell you about this feeling in extreme detail. And I can say this because Pickle is a Kenshin fan. Pickle got me to read Kenshin. And I pirated Kenshin, and I enjoyed pirating Kenshin because
I think my thing is I would never buy it either for knowing the background of everything.
Yeah, and then coming to know the mangaka actually got to just keep making a sequel series.
Yeah, it's kind of
so. It was nice to get like because I had like known about Kenshin in passing, so it was nice to get the story and like this is why it's classic shonen. This is why like even today, even like with what is known now, Kenshin and Shusui or Sensui, the main villain's name, yeah. They're both in Jump Force. Like, even if a lot of people aren't going to recognize them, they're in Jump Force, baby.
And dude Shashi, I think that's how you pronounce his name. He asked if you ever played Monster Hunter.
I hadn't devoted myself to Monster Hunter, and I know a lot of MH fans might say that's not true. You don't have to devote yourself, but like Monster Hunter involves like combos and like knowing like attack strings, and I haven't put enough time into any of them to get good and like figure out like what kind of weapon I like and stuff like that. But I love the world of Monster Hunter. They do such amazing collabs. There was just a Digimon collaboration last year. It was awesome.
Oh, okay.
Very, very cool. So I really like Monster Hunter.
Let's see. I have some previously submitted questions because for people who don't know, we planned this earlier. It didn't happen, so we asked the community tab twice technically for questions. We did. I pulled some from that one. So Jojo Johnson asked. He asked a bunch of questions, but I picked one of them. What channels do you watch?
What channels do I watch? As of like when I got out of college, because I had more time, I tried to really ramp up the amount of what ifs I was watching because I feel like that was something that was starting to lead to me not making as much content was I wasn't really interacting with the content I was trying to put out. So I started trying to like really increase the amount of the usual guys like Smug, Carthu. He doesn't do as many what ifs anymore, but the Salad, smaller channels. I try to look out for just if 500 view Dragon Ball or Pokemon what if I see one. In my Discord channel, which you can find by going to the description of a lot of my videos, we have a self-promo channel for like up-and-coming creators, or if anybody just make stuff just to be creative and like fan art sections and stuff like that. And you can go in there and find all kinds of stuff to watch. So I'll very often just kind of watch miscellaneous stuff from my community. I watch a ton of political content to be completely transparent. So that's what I'll be watching throughout the day is maybe just like a stream of somebody watching the news and talking about stuff like that.
I watch some generic news stuff, but I don't like watch like a Fox or like generic like cable stuff.
Fair. Yeah, I stay away from that too. I'm trying my best to get a cable package canceled right now.
I used to volunteer like to clean that gym. That was always on. It was either Fox or like whoever was in power at the time. It's fine on me, really. Yeah, that's basically what it was. And it's funny, like certain areas like, oh, CNN's now over here. It's like very weird what would be explained because just a mixed spectrum of people over there.
Looking at I actually just pulled the subscription tabs. I want to Quentin Reviews is a channel I watch a ton. I watch a ton of Quentin Reviews. Super, super long stuff.
I genuinely like some of his stuff half the time, but sometimes I just get bored unfortunately.
No, that's fair. And he's honestly somebody else I should have inspirations to go ahead and go full into, really, really long stuff. Loxton and Noggin is a channel I love. They do, it didn't used to be all Pokemon focused, but now it's basically like Pokemon ecology style content, like breaking down why Pokemon are designed and treated certain ways, like by its canon. I watch The Truth for like Dokkan content because Dokkan is a job. I'll watch a ton of game reviewers. I watch Normie Jesus, Most Critical. I've gotten really into watching like Lego YouTubers just talk about Legos as of recently. Just like there's a channel called My Brick Opinions that they've been talking about Lego knockoffs and stuff like that. I've been on a very big
one guy, but I don't think he makes content anymore. But he was really cool. He has a Lego channel. Need to find him.
Also I've been watching what's his name, Ranger Toa, or I've been watching Vertus Joe's Power Ranger content because I've been very much getting back into Power Rangers since it's an anniversary right now. There's nothing happening. I watch so much stuff. It's such a weird, like Kuuno, those like CJ the Champ style content creators where it's like just kind of doing commentary on an animation or like a piece of Sakuga or something like that, or a fight they want to talk about. So much, man. It's a ton.
Yeah, I found the channel. His name's Rubric. He like goes over history of different like sets and such, but he hasn't posted like last year essentially. So.
He's in my sublist. He was already there. Funny.
I'm trying to think who else I watch. I watch like a bunch of like theme park channels. I think they're kind of interesting. Like learn about history of different rides and how different parks get established.
Oh, I watch a bunch of like comic review and maybe dramatic comic reading channels. So like Variant Comics, Comic Storian, where the late great Benny Johnston was there. Ton of stuff.
Yeah, it's really sad what happened to him.
It really is. That was one of those things I was thinking about when I even said earlier, like YouTube can be such a fleeting job. Is like not only that, I think you watch content creators, and a big thing we tell ourselves is like, oh, this person probably stays like at home and is probably therefore by that metric safer a lot of the time. And like, no, it comes for all of us at some point, and it's very unpredictable. So I just be very grateful and at peace and content and show a lot of enthusiasm for the time you're given, because that's one of those creators who I can definitely look up to and say like, wow, he didn't get all the time he probably should have, but that's a great way to have used it, because I know he did a lot of stuff for charity with his platform, which is great. And something I hope to do before I hit 10 years on YouTube is some kind of charity stream. I wanted to try and do a toy drive or something at the end of last year, but it was just too hectic.
No, I understand that. Yeah.
I'm kind of hoping Carthy will host another one and maybe invite me to that one. That would be easier, honestly.
Yeah. Well, sometimes people have to just figure out when they want to do them yourself or whatnot, but we'll see how things go, in all honesty. You might do another one, hopefully.
That'd be awesome. Even if he doesn't, more of those and just using the platform for it. Because I know I have so many young viewers, so.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Just to that extent.
As far as other random channels I watch, there's one called Strong Towns, which I guess that's one of the more politically lean channels I watch, but they basically talk about neighborhood structures, and they talk about like how suburbia basically kind of ruined America a lot. Kind of.
Oh, I like a channel like that. It's called Echo Gecko. They're the reason I talk about walkable cities. So
yeah, Strong Towns also has emphasis on that, but also like getting people involved with like community town halls and stuff. I think there's also one like it's about bikes or something. I used to watch that channel occasionally. Don't watch it too much right now. Cappy Barsky is really funny. So he has like a tier list series where he rates arcade games based off of like how well they distribute tickets, essentially, and goes over like game mechanics as far as that goes. Like that's a very unique channel and all.
Oh, another one I'd like to shout out is Toxic X Eternity TV. They're actually not, I think they're more of like a Twitch adjacent like archive channel. If you've ever seen those where it's like the creator is more so a Twitch creator, but they use their YouTube to archive like certain VODs they don't want to have to like deal with you disappearing after a certain point. And he's a guitarist. I think he's a pro metal guitar. He is a pro metal guitarist. And he'll do streams where like he just shows out people and they'll send songs for him to review and cover. And a lot of the times he'll do covers of Dokkan music, which is amazing. So I love his content. Another one is Always Nerdy. They're a channel that does like really, really, really long in-depth reviews of superhero games. And a lot of times they'll be like old licensed ones or ones that maybe didn't really get released. So they have one for a Daredevil game that was developed and never released.
Yeah, I found the other channel. It's called Not Just Bikes. That's what I was thinking of earlier.
That is Not Just Bikes. I love Not Just Bikes. Yeah, our feed is very similar.
The other interesting one I like to watch is Cam Sandwich, and he basically reviews like different board games and like goes at like historical context as well. Very interesting stuff there, but it's not for everybody.
Yeah. I mentioned I watch a bunch of like Pokemon Let's Players before. I got into a pretty big AI D&D kick for a little while with like the present plays ones, but with like political stuff being all that's been around for like the last few months, I haven't been able to watch any of that content lately.
I think my thing is I couldn't get into those in general because it's hard to believe that there's a person behind it in some aspects. So it's like a diminution.
There's that. There's also that you have to suspend disbelief that like all the roles are true.
That is also true.
Because there's one person playing for everyone. So at that point, it's just, all right, you might just do whatever works for, being interesting. I watch Six. Six is probably my favorite power scaler. I just find him funny. And he talks about interesting stuff. And I don't really watch that much power scaling content. I mostly just watch his stuff because I think it's really, really well executed and laid out. I can throw an overly sarcastic production video any time of the day. I watch a lot of like fake mon content where people just like, or just like fan art stuff in general. I'll watch people drawing like battleizers for Power Rangers that never got them in their stories or something like that. I watch so much content. I consume more YouTube than I do any other kind of content probably. And I actually looked at this the other day. Every app has to do a like recap thing now. I guess like a Spotify Wrapped thing. And so is Crunchyroll now. So I sent this in my Discord. I think it was like I was consuming some amount of every week for 48 weeks out of 52 weeks of last year. So, and I definitely take in more anime than I do, or not. I definitely take in more just like general content than I do. So that's probably what was filling out the like vast majority of that other time. And then you have like movies and music around the other bits.
Draco asked, is there a non-saying character you haven't given specific focus that you would want to do a what if on?
Somebody like who could carry their own what if, Dragon Ball wise. I've done a Piccolo story. I still want to do one that's like very, very King Piccolo focused because they are different characters to me.
Yeah, that's fair.
In like really drastic ways. So like one I've been kind of threatening to do for a while, but probably won't do for a while is what if King Piccolo left Earth? Because now we know so much about Daima. There's a bunch of different ways you can do it.
Yeah, that'd be very interesting if he's like, nope, I'm just leaving. Not dealing with it.
Yeah, maybe he just wins, and from there it's just like, all right, I'll leave if you guys me and my Brutus ship, and they do. So they go off, and my basic premise for it is Piccolo meets Babidi first, but Babidi is like, okay, you're not a good enough servant for me to do what I want to do, so I'm going to send you to the demon realm with the goal of recruiting like a very powerful demon, and that'll set up like a fun thing where you can have King Piccolo interact with Demon King and explore like the past like ruling history of the demon world through Demon King Piccolo and kind of have him be the titular character for a while.
Yeah, it does sound very interesting. I think one character I think that could hold a strong story would be Bulma, because how central she was in early Dragon Ball and how you could work it to make it happen. But there's definitely a lot of investment you have to do.
I agree. I think if you, or this might be another point when like you hear me and you think I'm conceited. I think a great sign of a whatever, or like a really well suited for doing really out there fan fictions that don't necessarily feel like fan fiction just because the amount of effort and like understanding of lore and the context that goes into them. If you can look at any character in the series and think up something interesting you could do with them in a story, you're probably cooking. Like one concept I've always had is what did Grandpa Gohan raise Yamcha? Yamcha knows about Grandpa Gohan just like off rip, even though he's an orphaned like bandit. Like the legend of Grandpa Gohan was, at least to Yamcha, like as expansive as the legend of Master Roshi. So the idea of him like seeking him out and maybe trying to steal from him and then getting adopted before Goku got there is really interesting, because then you have a setup where like Yamcha isn't the like butt of the joke. Yamcha is Goku's big brother in that case, and or like how things can go from there. You could change that. Goku doesn't get adopted by Gohan or something like that. So there's tons of stuff you can do. If you can just pull up a list of the characters and just throw a dart at them and say, all right, I'm going to figure out a story for Pui Pui and I'm going to do it as best as I can, you're cooking. See, I guess it's Pui Pui. I'm going to figure out a story for Pui Pui at some point. Mostly so I can say the name Pui Pui a lot. I'm sorry to keep cutting you off.
No, it's fine. Nardi, he asked, what series you're most proud of and what short you think has the most potential to be turned into a full what if.
What series I'm most proud of? That's another, that's like what's your favorite one? I mean,
the other one. The other one sounds interesting.
The short that I feel like has the greatest potential expanded on as of currently, honestly, like the last 6 I've released have been good for that idea, but I really liked my what if Toguro stayed good concept that I had for Yu Yu Hakusho. It would be really, really simple, but honestly, that might be one of my next like kind of out there what ifs that is just like a one shot, because it ties up so well. Like it doesn't have to be a series, I feel like. Yeah, I feel like people would really enjoy it, because it's also another one of those things where it's like, it's a line in the story where like Genkai and Toguro at one point talk about like how different things would have been if he just made a different choice.
Memes and Treasures asked about if you were to change one aspect of like one of your older completed stories, what would that be and why?
I'd probably look to Goku on Namek, because I think that's one of the first stories I ever finished, and there's a lot of it that I don't feel like aged very well, and it's also so short, which is interesting because I remember saying I wanted to do it as a limited series, and I don't remember why I had to at this point. I might have to go back and just listen to what I was saying at that point. There's also
one also puts new context.
Yeah, there's new context from Daima. Honestly, that was made before like superhero and stuff. That was made before a good decent bit of like new Dragon Ball content.
Oh yeah, that was one worth probably revisiting some point.
Yeah, I think it came like right after Bro. I think we had Broly out for like maybe a year. So I think I would probably change a good bit of that. Maybe I would change some stuff with Vampa Goku. I still kind of stand by Vampa Goku as like, it's not really supposed to feel like Dragon Ball and all that kind of way. It's supposed to be kind of a leaning into the idea of like Kakarot and Goku would be two completely different characters just because they would probably have really different experiences to come about. So it was my idea of like, here's a seinen Dragon Ball. Like here's what I would feel like what would happen if Toriyama, after he first saw the Bardock special, left and was like, no, I feel like the rest of the series should be like that, just because it's reached that kind of like space opera, that kind of like over dramatic and really, really poignant and haunting, you know, the good guys may lose in the end, being consumed in like a fiery death explosion and thinking of their child in their last moments. That might be the last thing you end off a chapter of Dragon Ball with in canon. You know, that was my goal with that one. So either of those two, I might be willing to change stuff with.
Brave Tree asked about how much do views affect your motivation to write what ifs.
I go back and forth. Some days I'm definitely not working for the views. I'm working for the sake of the story. Some days in a certain amount of views will like really hurt and make me feel bad. Like they'll make me question, like, do I still have it? Have I lost it? Am I cooked? And it's usually when it's like something that the community has been pretty clear that they don't really like, but it's something that I'm obviously doing as a passion project. So, my first One Piece what if. One issue of my first One Piece what if is, number one, it does not involve the name Luffy in it anywhere. It doesn't have Luffy's name in it. Luffy isn't on a thumbnail. Luffy, the straw hat isn't on a thumbnail anywhere. So it's one of those things where it's like there are fans of just the wider range of One Piece in general, but it's very little One Piece merchandise you'll ever go out and buy in a store that won't have like Luffy's face on it somewhere, if you think about it. So the idea of like trying to sell a video in that same way, you're number one, depending on only the informed to know like who the titular character is and like what the change is and be intrigued by that. And number two, I also did a One Piece what if that required somebody like have knowledge up to Enies Lobby 4, which is that's a decent ask. Like that's not that much One Piece, but that's not a small amount of One Piece either. Or at least that's a small amount of One Piece as somebody who's read One Piece and watched most of it. But for somebody who hasn't read or watched One Piece, that's a lot of content to take in to watch a single video, right?
I mean, that's what my pro what if it, because it implies you have to know like Marineford, like most of the pre-time skip this idea, because I'm skipping like all of that to jump into like Dressrosa and like everything essentially to like the final confrontation.
Yeah, so I wonder if that kind of hurt that one some. I feel like that's the main one that gets hit up sometimes, where like the audience will very much be like, I'm not necessarily here for this one. I'm glad you're enjoying it though. Sonic does better than I really expected Sonic to do. Sometimes like when it first comes out, it doesn't do great, but then if I leave it like a few months afterwards, they usually juice up pretty well, which is interesting because I think the premise I chose for that first Sonic What If isn't super out there, but it's still one that I found personally interesting.
I think what sucks for me is that MCU What Ifs basically died because its own franchise is like cannibalizing itself. It's just not that good. That's the problem.
Yeah, even the inverse like What If show went ahead and ended rather. And I think it partially ended because the in-canon What If show was less like What If and more so like, especially by the end when they were showing a bunch of like the different alternative timelines that they weren't going to have time or like an ability to show. It felt more like we have a bunch of concepts for different stuff that could be toys and like in-game character skins and stuff like that.
I think the issue with that show is that if you're trying to do like more episodic things, it felt like they're tying stuff in later on. Oddly, it's like, why do you do that? Like,
yeah,
because having it more episodic, people can choose what they like, and based off of that information, like as a company, in some aspects, it's like, okay, people are watching these ones. Well, we could explore more similar ones of that. Like it felt like they didn't do that because they would have had the numbers for them.
Yeah, it also got to a point where I thought Captain Carter was a really cool what if idea. The fact that she became such a constant in like the multiversal stuff in general became kind of draining, and then it became a thing of like, okay, if we are going the route of this show is just as much an excuse to sell like different merchandise and different, character skins and toys, of like, you have a Black Panther and you have a Star-Lord figure, but don't you want T'Challa as Star-Lord figure? Like, okay, of course I do. If we're going that route, go ahead.
To put it this way, I think if I were to like approach what they're doing, I think how Spider-Verse tackles things better. You have a big overall arching plot, but you explore other people's stories in that aspect. That's the best way you could have done it.
Either that or like, even to that point of like Captain Carter, like I thought it was a cool idea. If the goal is to sell a lot of stuff, like in the way that like Transformers, G.I. Joe, like, used to have entertainment that was solely meant to just be a long commercial before the actual commercials. That's really hard to do nowadays, and with that kind of stuff, it's very difficult.
Let's see, Pickle Bill, the legend, he asked, what sort of media do you draw inspired from? Well, you already answered this technically. Draw inspiration from
more in depth to that idea of like what media I draw inspiration, just so it's not a non-answer. Yeah. It very much needs to be like I get to use the term the vibe of what I want inspiration from. So like, does the vibe match what I'm trying to go for? And if that's the case, then anything. It can be literally anything. It can be a certain like little snippet from a nature documentary or something like that, which is something I actually have done for Pokemon What If at one point. Was just I had been just kind of scrolling and I was watching like just random like animal fact videos and just saw a little like interaction between two animals. a video. I was like, okay, that could be a fun interaction between two things. Once you like put yourself in the shoes of 4 what ifs, with the goal of what ifs being an alternate universe in the way of it should feel somewhat familiar. Like that's not true multiverse theory. Because true multiverse theory is that there are so many infinite possibilities and infinite like variations of things that there is a different world. We're having this exact same conversation, but I'm just speaking in a slightly different cadence, and that's an entire different universe to itself. And then there are like 60 more where like there are very basic changes just like that. But then there are ones where like the changes are so drastic, they aren't recognizable. So with the goal of what if being to find a sweet spot there where it's like, this is interesting enough to feel unrecognizable, but recognizable enough to feel interesting. And like a true, like, you know, hit in the story. You have Dragon Ball do this stuff all the time with this official game. Sparking Zero just tried this again. It becomes that to where finding that vibe and then applying yourself in the position of like, where was the creator when they were writing this, and what were they taking inspiration from? And at that point, it just becomes kind of like a plug and play equation, like base story plus inspiration equals outcome, I guess is the way you could look at it.
See, Coder SV3S, hey plus, what's your opinion on VTubing and PNG tubing?
I don't see anything wrong with it. It's probably the future of content, which is a little scary. Yeah, which is a little scary, I will say, just because I feel like with the AI voices and that combined, even this won't be a safe haven for the human laboring. But there are like a multitude of reasons for why somebody could like really, really benefit from having a PNG model, like a V. And I hear so many times of like I forget what her name is. She seems like such a sweet and genuine person though. She won I think it was a Twitch award. She won like Streamer of the Year over I am talking about Iron Mouse. She won over Iron Show Speed and everybody got mad, or not everybody. Community got mad at her.
I thought it was
was that Kai? I'm sorry, I don't mean to. That was Kaisenet. That was Kaisenet.
Asked him and like Twitch subscribers.
You're right. You remember this way better than I do. But people were really, really mad about that, or mean about that, and they were like going back through her history because they knew nothing about her, and she had apparently done like some call to action to raise money for a medical bed that could like help her sit up and do streams for longer. And it's like, damn, like that's a reason for why like her conditions make VTubing or let VTubing be such a vital bridge to connect and interact with people in a meaningful way, that like the idea of disparaging it is really gross to me now. Whereas like I feel like when I first got like exposed to I had that like kind of weird eyebrow turn up where it's like, this feels like it was made for like lolly enjoyers, and I've gotten way past that stage. I'm sure there are still those out there, but I doubt that's like the only reason it's there.
I'm sure there's some people exploiting this. Unfortunately, that's just what comes with territory. But
with any territory, somebody will exploit it. You're completely right about that.
But I think
YouTubers, as
time goes on, people get what it's about. It's just took people. Well, I know I was one of those early adopters, and it was definitely investment put into it. And I would say if anyone wants to consider it, like I'd recommend PNG tubing first, because if trying to get an actual model and stuff, it gets really pricey. Like, not gonna lie about that.
Yeah, that's another thing about AI. If it's probably going to make that kind of thing more easily entered, which will again be taking work away from somebody else. But
I think it'll make I don't know if you're familiar with like meshing or like wireframing, but
I know enough about the terminology to know what you mean.
It'll make that easier, like for the actual like rigging and artwork size things, but the actual like art and stuff, I think it'll still need human hands, especially like for 3D models for some aspects. Like unless they're stealing from that, which that's difficult to say right now because I only am more familiar with like 2D generation models and such, so I don't know how advanced we are with 3D. Besides, like there's just one tool where like you can put like a 2D image and it'll turn it 3D type of deal, but it's like we've kind of had something similar, so it's not that crazy.
Yeah, to be fair, a lot of the new quote unquote fangled AI technology have for packaging. It's strange.
It feels like plugins just being repackaged as AI for some stuff. Like, for example, I recently got software that like cuts audio, but it's like I wouldn't call it AI in that aspect. It literally recognizes something
More and more,
talking and getting rid of it. That's like all it does.
I'm realizing more and more AI is going to be one of those things that like you slap on to make it like to justify a price increase. I was watching this review of like an AI powered stroller, like an AI powered like a baby stroller, and it doesn't actually like self function in the way that it is advertised to. I forget what the quote unquote AI does, but it's basically just like a Bluetooth baby stroller, and it's like, Jesus, that is, put a speaker in it if you're that desperate. But like that, it's just to upsell. It's just to upsell it. There's no benefit from it.
Dex Comics, brother channel, he asks, would you rather fight a xenomorph or a predator?
I mean, a xenomorph is just like, that's just nature, man. It's just there because you're in the territory. A predator, like a Yautja is there because he views you as hopefully he views you as a worthy warrior, worthy prey. And if I'm going out, I'd probably rather be like a severed skull and spine on a mantelpiece rather than like a slurry of like xenomorph blood and entrails and excrement. So I'll probably go with the predator.
Yeah, I feel like with a predator, you kind of have better odds in some aspects.
You could win and be given like an old like 1872 like flintlock pistol.
I mean, the other funny thing is try and convince it, it's like, yeah, you're not worth my time. Like that's the other
just be such a terrible combatant. It's like, oh, never mind, and or get pregnant.
That's also really something I forgot. But I do think that'd be a funny plot for a Predator movie where it's just supposed to be the most incompetent person trying to convince the Predator not to kill them the best they can. I think that'd be really funny to watch.
That's kind of what happens in Prey, the newest one, where it's like the braves, like the warriors from the tribe, are what it originally deems, and then like the soldiers that come to do like colonization, it deems them as like worthy prey, and it keeps overlooking her the entire time. Way too late, and it's already getting messed up. So you would just kind of be twisting it from there to be like, okay, it's taking you seriously because it actually heard the story of that predator, but you're so incompetent that it's like, oh, and it becomes like a buddy cop movie or something. Like that could actually be extremely funny.
Dilly Primely asks, have you ever had a dream of creating your own story one day?
Yeah, I talk about this all the time. Don't be alarmed, but like I don't want to do YouTube for At some point I would like to try and do my own thing and like start some kind of story. Like if I could pull a Corey Kenshin and make a manga, that'd be cool. That'd be really, really cool.
I mean, Moist Critical also did one with
yeah, Moist is doing a graphic design or I think it's more of a graphic novel, but he's doing God Slap.
Similar. Yeah. It's close. It's adjacent.
Same realm. But yeah, I would love to do something like personal at some point for sure. My current fear with that is that you would see too many like shades of plus Ultraman content, which is just what if content about other stuff. So like I'd be scared of like, okay, well I really want to like have some kind of reference to the father son Kamehameha in it, and then everyone who knows me is just like, oh, you just did the father son Kamehameha again. Cool, but so that's one of those things I feel like I kind of still need to grow some for.
Last question here from community. Mr. Negative asked, what are the current anime you're keeping up with? That's what he's asking.
Third Shangri-La Frontier name drop. I can pull up Crunchyroll right now and just tell you exactly what the last few things I watched.
Yeah, that's fine.
There's a show called, I think it's brand new now. The Red Ranger becomes an adventurer in another world. Like I said, I've been on the Power Rangers kick, and I don't usually give Isekai as many passes, but sometimes they have decent concepts for them. Blue Exorcist just came out with a new season. I watched it. I was there for every episode of Blue Lock season 2. I was there for the entire conversation about it. What else? I was there for Dandadan. I was I very recently got into Welcome to Demon School, Iramakun. I watched the first 3 seasons of it that have been released, and then I ended up going to the manga. Because it's one of those things that has not done as well outside of Japan, but like it's extremely popular. And I figured out why. I would honestly argue it might be one of the better like supernatural like class setting manga and stories we've had like recently. I would probably rank its ensemble cast as like better set up and better executed than the My Hero cast, honestly.
That's interesting. I think the main thing I'm keeping up with is Bleach because I started with it, so I kind of just want to see how the story resolves some aspects. And I've been watching some other stuff. I watched the recent season of Castlevania Nocturne because been watching it on and off again. I think after this season though, I might drop it because not sure. It felt like it improved from the previous season, but it just doesn't feel like enough. I don't know if I want to be invested into another season. Is how I put it.
Fair. It's really fair. I recently got into the new Pokemon series Horizons.
Really?
Yeah, I think it is a more than suitable like replacement. I think if I was a kid growing up, just as happy as a kid who got to grow up with Ash and the classic stuff, if not happier, honestly.
And that's where we're gonna cut off things here since we've been going almost 2 hours, I feel like. But anyways, would you like to promote some stuff as we close out here?
Nothing like specific. I do a ton of stuff in general. I have a bunch of collabs. You can probably find them just by going to my channel. I have a bunch of creators that I work with to do stuff. Like we probably said a bunch of their names throughout the recording.
Sure we did.
Yeah, you can go and check out any of that kind of stuff, or just give me a like and a follow if you haven't in a while or something like that. Just make sure you like up the interview here so Drew doesn't mind having me back on at any other point or something like that. And have a nice day. That's all I can tell you.
Anyways, that's all we got for right now. Hopefully, I got some other people lined up. I got Sane Motions. That one came out before this one because how scheduling went. And as far as other stuff, I'm planning to interview some non-web creators. If you have someone in mind, let me know in the comments. I have some people I'm going to check up with probably next couple months here while I do some other stuff. But anyways, this has been Drew from What If Universe, reminding you that in What If Universe are endless possibilities, and I'll see you in the next one. So, peace.
See ya.